I used to joke that the commute would kill me before the job did. 45 minutes each way from my little house in Minneapolis to the warehouse on the other side of the river. Crawling traffic, brake lights like a second sunrise. I hated it, but I treated it like weather. Complain all you want, it doesn't change. On August 1st, 2007, I was 33, married with a toddler at home, and already late for my shift. Rachel had kissed me at the door, baby on her hip, hair messy but eyes soft. She said, "Text me when you get there," and I waved it off like always. Yeah, you'll see me tonight. It was hot that morning, the kind of heat that bakes concrete. The Interstate 35W bridge looked like it always did. Steel trusses, faded paint, the Mississippi rolling indifferent underneath. I crossed it 1,000 times. I never looked twice. Bridges are supposed to hold. Traffic slowed in the middle like it always did. I tapped the wheel, tuned the radio, thought about the overtime I'd begged for and the bills it would only half cover. Then the sound came, metal screaming, a noise so wrong it rearranged the air. At first I thought it was construction, but then the road shuddered like an animal shaking off flies. Cars tilted. A crack split the asphalt right in front of me. I didn't think, I couldn't. The world tilted, and suddenly the road wasn't there. My car dropped, weightless for a second that felt like a year, then slammed into something that crunched metal and glass. The steering wheel punched my chest. The airbag exploded. The smell of burning chemicals filled my nose. People screamed. Somewhere to my left, a semi-truck jackknifed, its horn blaring until it cut off. I tried to open the door, but it was jammed. Through the windshield, I saw water glinting where the road used to be. Sections of bridge lay like toys in the river, cars piled like crushed cans. My phone was on the floorboard, screen cracked but lit. Rachel's last text blinked unread. "Don't forget milk." My fingers shook so bad I couldn't type. A man banged on my window, a stranger with blood down his forehead. He yelled, "You gotta climb out." I shoved at the door again, harder, and it gave just enough. I crawled out onto tilted concrete that sloped toward the river. Smoke curled up from somewhere. Sirens hadn't started yet. For one long moment, it was just chaos, raw and uncontained. I remember thinking, this isn't real. Bridges don't fall. But my knees shook, and my hands stung with glass cuts. And the heat rising from twisted steel told me reality didn't care what I believed. That was the moment I knew life could split open in seconds. That was the moment the world taught me to stop assuming the ground would always be there. Time in a disaster stretches and folds. Some minutes lasted a lifetime, others evaporated. I remember crawling along the wreckage, other survivors shouting names, trying to open crumpled doors, pulling strangers out by their arms. A kid, maybe 8, sat crying beside a woman who wasn't moving. I wanted to help but froze. Another man knelt, checked her pulse, shook his head. The river was chaos. Cars nose down in the water, people clinging to debris. One woman screaming for her child over and over until her voice broke. I climbed down the twisted truss, ignoring the sting in my ankle, and grabbed a piece of driftwood to extend to someone flailing. His grip nearly pulled me in. Together we got him to a shallower edge. He kept saying, thank you, like words could cover drowning. Sirens came eventually. Police, fire, ambulances. Helicopters circled. Cameras pointed down. That's when I realized the whole country was about to watch this moment that had already split my life. I hated the thought of being part of a headline. I borrowed a stranger's phone to call Rachel. When she answered, sobbing already, I said, I'm okay. It was half a lie. She said, come home. And I said, I can't yet, I'm helping. Even as I said it, I wondered who I was trying to convince. Hours blurred. Rescue workers shouted orders, tagged cars with spray paint, used saws on twisted doors. They asked survivors to move to one side of the bank. I sat on the grass, my shirt ripped, ankle swollen, staring at the bridge's collapsed skeleton. It looked like bones. Reporters shoved microphones, asking how it felt. I said nothing. How do you tell a stranger that the world tilted and you're afraid to drive again already? Eventually, paramedics checked me out. Concussion, sprained ankle, bruised ribs. You're lucky, one said. I wanted to scream. Lucky? Lucky was the family that never drove this way. Lucky was the guy who called in sick. I felt like the opposite of lucky. I felt chosen for some punishment I didn't understand. Rachel picked me up from the triage center hours later. She hugged me so hard it hurt. Our daughter, Sophie, clung to my leg, crying because she didn't understand but felt enough. I sat in the back seat with her on my lap, smelling smoke in my hair, thinking, how do I walk into my own house when others won't tonight? That night, lying awake, I heard the collapse again in my head, the groan, the shudder, the fall. Every time I closed my eyes, my body jerked like I was dropping again. I held Rachel's hand so tight she whispered, I'm here. Even though I was the one who should have said it. The bridge was gone, but its absence was louder than steel. In the weeks after, everyone wanted a story. Co-workers, neighbors, even strangers when they learned I was one of the survivors. They asked what it felt like, how it looked, whether I thought the government was to blame. Their questions turned my trauma into small talk. I gave canned answers. Scary. Like a movie. Glad to be alive. But at night, I woke drenched in sweat, my heart pounding like the impact was happening again. Sophie would cry from her crib, and I'd rush in, hold her, whisper that she was safe, even as I doubted safety existed. Rachel tried to be patient. She cooked my favorite meals, rubbed my ankle, let me talk when I wanted. But sometimes she looked at me with fear, like she'd lost the man she knew even though I was sitting right there. I stopped driving across bridges. I'd take ridiculous detours, adding 40 minutes to my commute. If there was no other route, I'd freeze at the approach, hands sweating, chest tight. Once, I parked and walked back home, called in sick rather than cross. My boss was understanding at first. Then the warnings came. We need reliability, Mike. As if reliability is possible when every steel beam looks like a coffin. Therapists call it PTSD. I call it being haunted. Sounds triggered me. The groan of a garbage truck, the slam of a dumpster lid. I snapped at Rachel for small things. I drank too much. Once, when she asked if I was okay, I yelled, I survived a bridge falling, of course I'm not okay. Her eyes filled with tears, and shame hit me harder than the fall. Survivor's guilt carved deep. 22 people didn't make it home that day. I read their names in the paper. Teachers, retirees, a father with his daughter in the back seat. I thought about their families sitting in funeral pews while I sat on my couch. I couldn't explain why I was alive and they weren't. One night I dreamed I was under the water, trapped in a car, watching bubbles escape. I woke gasping, clawing the air, Rachel shaking me. You're here, she said. You're home. But my body didn't believe her. I wanted to quit my job, quit driving, quit trying. But Sophie would toddle over, arms raised, saying, Daddy up! And I'd pick her up, hold her against my bruised ribs, and realize quitting wasn't an option. Still, I felt like half a man, alive but only technically. Healing didn't come in a moment. Came in inches. Counseling helped, though at first I hated it. Talking felt like tearing scabs off. But the therapist taught me breathing tricks, grounding exercises, ways to remind my body it wasn't still falling. Rachel stood by me even when I didn't deserve it. She said, we'll rebuild. And I thought she meant us, not bridges. The city built a new bridge in record time. Shiny, strong, full of promises. On opening day, I avoided the news. The thought of people cheering on steel made me nauseous. But one afternoon months later, stuck in traffic, the GPS had no other route. I sat at the base of the new span, hands trembling on the wheel. Sophie was in the back seat, humming to herself, not knowing her dad was falling apart. Daddy, go! She chirped when the light turned green, and I did, slowly, my chest tight, palms slick, but the car moved. The bridge held. Each second felt like an hour, but I made it across. When the tires hit the far side, I burst into tears so sudden Sophie asked if I'd hurt myself. I said, no, baby. Daddy's okay. And for once, I almost believed it. I started volunteering with a support group for disaster survivors. We sat in a church basement, folding chairs in a circle, telling truths no one else wanted to hear. One man survived a factory collapse. A woman lost her husband in a tornado. We all spoke different languages of loss but understood each other's silences. I told them about Rachel's patience, about Sophie's innocence, about driving over that bridge and feeling my chest unclench. Someone nodded and said, "That's hope." I don't claim to be healed. I still tense at certain noises. I still avoid unnecessary bridges. But I don't freeze anymore. I drive. I live. I tuck Sophie in at night and kiss Rachel's forehead and whisper thank yous to a sky that doesn't answer. The bridge collapsed beneath me once. But life didn't. And if there's any lesson, it's that sometimes surviving isn't about being unbroken. It's about carrying your brokenness across the next span. One step, one drive, one day at a time.